we've got ourselves a top 10 matchup in the SEC to talk about. The Ole Miss Rebels, the 5th-ranked Ole Miss Rebels, the undefeated Ole Miss Rebels, the Ole Miss Rebels who have a one-game win streak against the Georgia Bulldogs, travel to Athens to take on Kirby Smart's defense and Gunnar Stockton's offense, and Mike Bobo's offense, I should say, because it's a very important point. Interesting stat here, Mississippi, Ole Miss, has not won in Athens since 1996. That's a long time. That's 29 years of a long time. So it's been a while since the Rebels have come between the hedges and gotten a win. Let's get right into this game. So much is riding on this game. Georgia, you could say they don't really have to win this game, but man, oh man, would it be bad if they lost. If Georgia loses this game, they need to get stressed out as a Georgia fan. You're thinking, if we lose one more, we could be out of the playoffs. And if you're Ole Miss, you're still thinking, are we for real? We've beaten LSU. We're ranked number 5, but then we struggled mightily with Washington State, and LSU, it turns out, is really not very explosive. So that might have been a good one. Are we elite? Are we really SEC contenders? Can we really contend nationally? Or are we just the same old Ole Miss? So this game is gonna really prove a lot of that. We're gonna get a lot of knowledge from this game. So here's what I want to talk about first. Last year, these two teams played. They played in Oxford. They played at 2:30, and Ole Miss won 28-10. They dominated this game, and they didn't dominate it statistically on offense. Jackson Dart didn't go out there and throw 5 touchdowns. They didn't run the ball for 300 yards. What they did is they squeezed Georgia on defense. Georgia could not run the ball at all. They couldn't move the ball, but they could not run the ball for anything. And I think a lot of that is credited to Ole Miss's dominant defensive line last year. Walter Nolan and the gang just sort of stuffed everyone. They were gap sound, and their linebackers made plays, Chris Paul and company, for outside zone. So Georgia couldn't run the ball against anyone last year, especially couldn't run the ball against Ole Miss. That put a lot of pressure on Carson Beck and these receivers, and they just were not good enough to make plays. So shout out to Ole Miss stopping the run last year. But this is a new Georgia. This is not Georgia of last year. This is Georgia of this year. And the Georgia of this year is 7th in the SEC in rushing yards per game. Much better than last year. They were 15th last year. They're 7th this year. I look at this Georgia team and I look at their offensive line, and they are good. They're big. They're athletic. They can run counter. They can run zone. They can run duo. This is a much more dominant rushing attack than it was last year. Is it perfect? Heck no, it's not perfect. But I'm also looking at an Ole Miss front 7 that is way worse than it was last year. They, of course, played LSU this year, and LSU can run the ball very well, but LSU hasn't really been able to run the ball well against anybody. So I think Georgia is going to be much better offensively this year than they were last year. I think Gunnar Stockton took a big leap against Auburn. I think that the first few weeks of the year, he's been playing very timid. He hasn't been pushing the ball down the field. He hasn't really been giving his receivers chances to make plays. But against Auburn, he was ripping throws. And was he missing a lot? Sure. But he was giving his guys a chance. He read zone coverage and he said, this is the read. I'm ripping a seam. I'm ripping a corner. I'm giving my guys a chance. I'm giving myself a chance to compete downfield. And again, he's not a perfect athlete, but he gives you 100% every play. That dude, it got popped multiple times against Auburn. He got hit hard, but he kept fighting out there. He kept going. So I appreciate what Gunnar Stockton did against Auburn last week. I think we see more of that against Ole Miss. I think Georgia, basically all of this to say, Georgia's offense is going to improve against Ole Miss versus what they did last year because they can run the ball more and because Gunnar Stockton is taking steps forward and these receivers are dynamic. So let's go to the other side of the ball. Let's talk about Ole Miss's offense. This is what Ole Miss likes to do. They like to spread you out, meaning they put wide receivers, tight ends towards the hashes. So what that does is it forces the defense to put their corners and their safeties more outside, which means you have less defenders in the box, which makes it a lot easier to get creases up the middle in the run game. So what Ole Miss likes to do is they like to spread you out. They like to run the ball to get first downs, and once they get a first down, they go fast. They're on the ball immediately. They rush. And what that does is it catches teams in man coverage. And when you catch a team in man coverage, because when you have to defend a team that's going so fast, you don't have time to call these dynamic zone covers. You don't have time to disguise cover 3 or to call a zone blitz because the assignments get buffed and then you bust the play. So what Ole Miss wants to do against Georgia and wants to do against anyone is run fast and make Kirby Smart run man coverage. And then when Lane Kiffin gets you in man coverage, that's when he takes one-on-one shots down the sideline. That's when he runs RPOs. That's when he beats you down the field and he makes his players make your players miss. But this might sound similar to a different coaching scheme that we know in the SEC, and that is the Auburn Tigers. Auburn runs a lot of RPOs. They run a lot of plays where they spread you out and they say, we're either going to hand it off or we're going to make our receivers make plays one-on-one down the field. And what Texas A&M did against Auburn is they bracketed Cam Coleman, meaning they put a safety over top of Cam Coleman and said, we're not going to let him beat us downfield because we're going to have two guys on him. But what Georgia did against Auburn is they said, no, we don't need safety help. Our corners are good enough. We're going to put Ellis Robinson one-on-one, we're going to put Everett one-on-one, and we're going to make those guys make their money. They're going to go out there and they're going to dominate one-on-one, and they're not going to let you make plays to your wide receivers in RPO one-on-one go routes. And I think it worked brilliantly. So that's what I really am excited to watch in this Ole Miss game is Ole Miss trying to throw the ball deep one-on-one against these corners from Georgia. Because I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's possible. So I think Georgia is going to this is what they did against Auburn in the second half. They squeezed them. They basically stacked the box. Even though they were getting spread out, they said, no, I trust our guys one-on-one. We're going to still stack the box. They're going to stop the run, and they're not going to let Ole Miss go deep down the field. I think that Georgia's linebackers are so important in this game too, because I talked about earlier, Ole Miss likes to run the ball on first down and second down to get first down so they can go fast. When your corners and your safeties are spread out, your linebackers have to make plays. And C.J. Allen has been a dog this year. Watch number 3. If you're watching the Georgia Ole Miss game, watch number 3 on Georgia's defense. He's awesome. But the other guys, the other linebackers, especially Raylan Wilson, they've just kind of been out of position a little bit. So Raylan Wilson has to step up. C.J. Allen has to keep playing well. I think they do. I've got Georgia winning this game by double digits. I think Georgia's a better team. I trust their corners more than I trust Ole Miss's wide receivers. And you know what? I could be completely wrong. Lane Kiffin could scheme them up. He could call all these RPOs. They could run the ball well. And Trinidad Chambliss could make a bunch of crazy plays on third down. I love Trinidad Chambliss. It's Ole Miss's quarterback. I think he's fantastic. I think he's so much fun. He's athletic. He makes plays with his arms and his legs. But I don't see Ole Miss consistently being able to move the ball down the field with their receivers against man coverage from Georgia. I mean, Georgia ran great man coverage against Alabama. They realized in the second half, we don't need to run zone. We can run man. Alabama's wide receivers are a heck of a lot better than Ole Miss's, and Georgia was able to run man against them. I don't see how Ole Miss's wide receivers make plays in this game. It was so weird. They ran so much zone against Tennessee, and then they realized, why are we running zone? Our corners and our safeties are so good. We could just man teams up and win that way. And they have the last couple weeks. So hats off to Kirby Smart for figuring that out. And hats off for Georgia for getting another huge win. I will say, a lot of people have been telling me and talking about Georgia, how good of a halftime adjuster Kirby Smart is. How good that head coach is at making his team so much better going into the second half than they are in the first half. And I understand that, and it's true to an extent. But I think that's more of a problem of Georgia in the first half. You're walking out into these games. You're walking into Knoxville. You're walking out to play Alabama at home. You're walking into Auburn, and you're just getting smoked in the first half. And to me, that's on the coordinators. Are y'all game planning for games? Or are you just wheeling your team out there and expecting them to win because of the logo on their helmet? You got to game plan a little bit better, Mike Bobo. You got to have some idea of what you're doing on offense. Georgia had no identity on offense in the first half against Auburn. That's got to change against Ole Miss. I think it does. I got Georgia winning by 10 points. So go Dogs in this game.